This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Battles don't always happen in a war zone. Battle-tested supernatural struggles in the natural. That's this week, straight ahead on A View from the Bunker. You have blessed us with your support during our first year in ministry. You literally make it possible for us to do what we do. And so as we prepare to head into a new year, we want to return the blessing to you. Through January, we've prepared a number of special offers at the Gilbert House store, and we're featuring the Red Wing Saga, Sharon's wonderful series of supernatural thrillers that teaches spiritual warfare through masterful storytelling with fascinating historical mysteries as the backdrop. Now, all 8 novels in the Red Wing Saga, a $160 value, can be yours for just $110, a savings of $50. You'll also find the Derek Gilbert Collection, all 5 of my nonfiction books, a $100 value for just $70. Those are just 2 of the special offers available through January at our online store. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/store. And as always, we thank you for your prayers and your support. Our most intense struggles do not happen here in the natural realm. That's what Paul meant when he wrote to the church at Ephesus. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. That's why I close this program with that every single week. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. This week we talk with a gentleman who is living proof that you can overcome these struggles with the spirit realm, which again is where our real fight is located. He grew up in the rough streets of Tacoma, spent 5 years in the Air Force as an acquisitions officer, which he attended the Air Force Academy, by the way, on a football scholarship. Currently works as a defense contractor supporting the Space Force. He's a student of Scripture, especially Bible prophecy, and he's the author of a new book, an autobiography called Battle Tested. We are honored to welcome to the program for the first time, Jamal Bird. I can confidently say without fear of contradiction that you are a young man. I know from your book, your autobiography here, that your parents and I are about the same age. So that makes you officially a young man. One might ask, I think this would be the first question. I, at the age of 60, have not found it necessary. I've not been led, let me put it that way, to write the story of my life. I frankly don't think people would find it all that interesting. Why did you sit down and choose to write your life story?
So it initially started after I graduated from the Air Force Academy. I wanted to share my unique experience going there. Most citizens in the U.S. Don't attend college, and then even less of those join the military, and then even less attend a service academy. But not only that, I was a black football player at the academy. So my experience was, truly unique. Once I began writing, I kind of realized that I needed to go back to make things make sense so the reader would understand why I am the way I am. And that kind of took me back to my childhood and my mother's childhood. But as I was working, I didn't only want to focus on the academy experience. I realized, with the way things are in the world, the falling away, the apostasy that's going on, I could use this opportunity to shine my light and share the rest of the obstacles that I've overcome. And that's kind of the main focal point. Throughout my life, I've, encountered countless injuries, violence growing up in Tacoma, and God's been there with me every step of the way. Even when I, was living in the world, God didn't let me go when he could have. So, kind of just wanted to share that to others. So, that can be some encouragement to them.
We, just before we started talking here, we shared just a little bit. I saw in the early chapters of your book, there's some similarities in your upbringing, and in mine, but one key difference is that my parents stayed together throughout their marriage. Your parents, you are a child of divorce, and I am divorced. Sharon and I are coming up on our 25th anniversary. Both of us were previously married. I have a daughter from previous marriage who's actually older than you. So, but you've got some insight as to how that molds and shapes you that I don't have, and that obviously this is something you would share with our daughter. How did that affect you as a kid growing up? How did it your dad leaving home change the course of your life?
Yeah, it was earth shattering. And throughout the book, I state that that experience has influenced me until this day. And through spiritual growth, I'm kind of learning some of the negative impacts that it's had on me, and open the door to unforgiveness and things of that nature that I've been able to get delivered from. But it was earth shattering. My father moved away right after, so my mother became a single mother of two boys. In the inner city, which left more time for us to get into misconduct. And then obviously financially, that put a big bear on us as well, because my father was in the military, and my mother, she was a stay-at-home mom. So she had to rejoin the labor force. So financially it was tough, her, providing for two boys. And then she was getting over an illness at the same time as well. She had bronchitis. So it was a lot of, different factors kind of moving at once. And I hated my father right after it happened. Like, I remember, I never wanted to talk to him again. And then I kind of turned, into an angry kid, started hanging out with the wrong crowds and getting into, things that a kid raised in the church shouldn't. But, with hindsight, you kind of see like, wow, that's definitely, a monstrous event for sure.
You were raised in the church, you said, and you put a lot of this into the book. Even with the stuff that was going on around you, you were still getting involved in some things. Your coaches, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, basically telling you you can't bring that kind of stuff onto the court. How did that manifest, the anger that you felt after your father left?
Well, you go to church. If you're raised in the church, you go to church once or twice a week. But, the 5 other days you're at school, and typically at, public school, there's not a lot of good influence. So, especially in Tacoma, there's a lot of minorities and gangs. So you're being influenced by that on a daily basis. And then, once unforgiveness and anger kind of enter your heart, that opens a doorway for the enemy to attack you, even for children. So that's actually a couple of, emotional, negative things I was dealing with that I had to be delivered from. Like, I remember I put in the book, I had a 4-hour deliverance session with my mother and auntie, who, they're both strong prayer warriors. And, I remember them commanding the demons of unforgiveness and anger to leave. And I kind of spoke how I felt, like I hated my dad. And after that, I felt relieved. I was definitely delivered, but it wasn't until adulthood that I was freed from the pain. So I wasn't as angry, but I didn't heal until, recently, honestly. And then the other mistake was, once you're delivered, you have to keep that deliverance. As a young adult, that unforgiveness crept back in to where I kind of resented my father. So I needed to be delivered actually a second time as an adult.
You get into spiritual warfare, and I want to talk about this in a little bit, because this is, I think, a unique aspect of your book. I can say when I was your age, I was not as spiritually aware, as spiritually educated as you are. In fact, Sharon will tell you this, because I was older than you are now when we first met, and I was still arguing that there was no conflict between Darwinian evolution and the fall from grace in Genesis. So the Lord has been very patient with me in my education and coming along. So you're farther along than I was when I was your age. But at some point, you have to start with the basics, the gospel. What was it? When did you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And then we can move on from there to getting into the spiritual warfare.
I would say I returned wholeheartedly, 100% dedicated to the Lord 3 years ago when I was 27.
Okay.
So like I mentioned, I was raised in the church, but as a young adult, college, I kind of faded away, got into, the club scene and things like that. Then once I got out of the military, got on my own and started experiencing real adult struggles. And with the help of my mother, I was able to find God full time.
Hmm. So your mother, you also mentioned your mother's sister, Aunt Tony.
Yes.
What kind of influence have those prayer warriors had on your life?
The amount of influence to say I don't believe I would be here today without them. I think there's a scripture that says the prayers of the righteous, covers others. So
Availeth much. Yes.
I believe that their prayers covered me from a lot of danger, even when I was living wrong. So I definitely don't think I would be here without them. I still reach out to them for spiritual advice today. They've helped me in my marriage and with fatherhood, as becoming a step parent, and really every aspect of my life, you name it. I can call my mother or auntie to reach out for spiritual advice, and they have a biblical and a scriptural answer.
You describe your Aunt Tony as kind of a tough character. She doesn't tolerate doesn't suffer fools gladly.
No, not at all. I mean, and that's just the Detroit mindset. Her and my mother, both born and raised in Detroit, and I'm from Tacoma. I speak about Tacoma and its trials, but Detroit's another beast. And the fact that they were able to overcome their environment and find the Lord, and then turn into not only just everyday Christians, but devout prayer warriors is a huge testament to what God can do in anyone's life, no matter how you come up.
You really go into some detail on the generations before your mom and dad in Detroit,
right,
and the challenges that they faced trying to make ends meet in Detroit. What was that like? What kind of environment did that create, and how far did your parents, grandparents have to go to try to make ends meet?
Yeah, Detroit is more of a fight or flight environment, and extreme poverty, as I mentioned, just because of how the racial climate shifted decades ago, and the infiltration of black folks, and then the redlining and lack of real estate being available to certain cultures, kind of made Detroit a hub for poverty, and those who lack the things they need turn to violence and theft. So that's pretty much the environment they were raised in. There weren't a lot of opportunities to do what others are able to do in normal communities. So my grandmother Helen, she was an awesome individual. She was a great mother. She took care of her 3 children, but she also did what she had to provide as well, and that was sell drugs. And then but that kind of opened the door for more violence, as my mother was present when their home was burglarized at a point in time. So growing up in that type of environment, it definitely makes a person tough. So that's where their tough mindset and tough attitude comes from. But I think that's kind of what the kingdom needs is tough Christians, especially in these last days.
You got that right. That resulted in your mom moving from Detroit, getting out of there to Colorado, and that
Correct.
is where. It's almost as though there was a plan involved there to get your mom out of there and put her into the situation where she'd meet your father.
Absolutely. Yep. That was definitely God's plan for sure. And, she moved away at 18, and she's been saved since. She hasn't turned back. My father had moved there a few years prior as he enlisted into the military. And then they ran into each other at a local church, and that's where they hit it off.
So in Tacoma, you're coming up athletically gifted. This is one area where you and I are nothing alike. And this, allowed you to have some choice then as to where you would go on and go to college.
Yes, sir.
Given that your father had served in the Air Force and that he had left that emotional scar, why did you choose to go into the Air Force?
That's a great question. I've never heard it phrased that way. I get the question of did you join, the military because your father did, which is no. I never had any intentions of ever joining the military. The scar and the pain of the divorce didn't weigh in on my decision. It was more so because of my visit to the Air Force Academy and the opportunities and benefits of free education as well as a guaranteed job upon graduation, compared to civilian universities. Almost made the decision a no-brainer.
You mentioned that it was kind of a unique situation for you at the Air Force Academy, being a black athlete at the academy. How did that? What kind of stress did that create for you?
A good deal. I talk about it in the book as well at the prep school. The prep school is more diverse than the actual academy, just because it's mainly athletes that go to the prep school, since the actual Air Force Academy has such high academic standards that the prep school is kind of necessary to give kids an extra year to acclimate. So it was a little bit of a shock coming from a diverse upbringing, and then it was even more shocking at the Air Force Academy, which is only about 6% black per year, and that was it was very stressful. I think what helped me out a lot is I was able to meet a lot of friends at the prep school the prior year, and a lot of those kids came on to attend the Air Force Academy. So I did have some folks to lean on, but at the same time, often looking around and not seeing anyone like me or being the only, black cadet in a class, it was a different experience that definitely added, to the weight of, an already difficult institution.
How about the academic requirements then at the academy? I mean, obviously you're intelligent. Your writing is, evidence of that. But and the fact that you've had a successful 5-year career with the Air Force and now making your way in the world after the Air Force. What was? I'm just curious because I experienced this myself after being able to coast through high school, public school, without having to work too hard. When you're smart, you can kind of get by without having to work too hard. How different was it when you got into the coursework at the academy?
Yeah, the academic rigor at the Air Force Academy is I would say second to none. It's overwhelming for sure, and it's meant to be that way to kind of weed out the weak and put a strain and stress on those who are going to become the nation's leaders in the Air Force. So, I mean, you have 5 or 6 courses at a time. But not only that, you're participating in athletics, and then you have, military training on a daily basis. As a freshman cadet, you're getting beat or trained, physically trained in the mornings prior to school. And in the evening, you only have a few hours allotted for homework, but the academy intentionally gives you more homework than you can complete in a night, just to kind of emphasize time management. So, that the rigor weighed in on my major and my grades at the academy as well.
How'd you do?
I think cumulative, I had a 2.47 GPA, which, amongst the football team, that's actually pretty good. But in terms of, the entire cadet wing, that's on the lower half. And, in hindsight, I'm not disappointed with my grades because I gave it my best shot. That it's just a truly, truly difficult place. But at the end of the day, that education pays for itself once you graduate. And, there's a phrase that cadets say, it's a great place to be from, but not a great place to be at just because of how difficult it is. And, it's very true.
It's kind of how I feel about being from Chicago. I've reached an age where I prefer having cattle and coyotes for neighbors than other people, but that's just me.
I'm with you.
And I hear what you're saying. I didn't have the stress of having to practice with a football team and, do the weight training and all that, taking up extra time. But I still managed, I think, just a 3 after getting like a 3.8 in high school. And that 3, there were a few gifts in there from professors who just wanted to get me out of their class, I think. One of the challenges in college, and I think most of us have been to college, can attest to this. You get away from home for the first time. You're living on your own for the first time, out of the watchful eyes of your mom, dad, whoever.
Yep.
What sort of temptations did you run into in the academy, and how did that affect you?
I mean, pretty much every temptation you can think of. With my mother being a devout Christian, she was very strict growing up. So I was one of the few kids that, had a curfew in high school, as opposed to most of my other friends being able to hang out much later. So, once I had the first opportunity at the academy, I was drawn to alcohol. Cadets aren't able to, indulge in drugs legally because we get drug tested. But, there are a few out there that do. So that was a temptation. It was present, but it didn't pull on me too hard just because I was an athlete as well. But definitely clubbing, and then the peer pressure of college age men. They the goal is to sleep with as many women as possible, and go out there and just meet women and doing all kind of wrong things. So yeah, the temptation in all of those aspects was definitely there.
I was a professing Christian when I got to college, and I went through the same sort of falling away. And it wasn't until my 30s when I really started to come back and realize what being a Christian meant. And again, I will say, having been through college, I remember the temptations very well as well.
Right.
How did you rationalize it to yourself, knowing that what you were doing was not something your mother would have approved of?
That's a great question. I think my mindset was, I'm in college. I'm just going to enjoy my college years. And then once I graduate, then I'll start fully living for God once I'm settled down. But while I'm here, I want to enjoy my time with my buddies and, go out and drink here and go to this club and the other.
How much of a distraction did alcohol become?
Gradually, it became a huge distraction. In college, it definitely grew on me. As I mentioned in Battle Tested, alcoholism runs in my family, so I had a natural inclination towards it once I was, exposed to it on my own. So, during the football season, you really can't drink too much. You have practice all the time. And you have games on Saturdays, but after the season, guys kind of let loose. So. I gradually grew a liking towards alcohol, and then by the time I graduated, I was drinking pretty much every weekend. Sometimes just on my own, and not to go out or anything, just drinking just to drink.
What was it that got you away from that pattern?
One of the major influences was actually my wife, even, prior to us dating, because we had known each other since high school, and we were friends before anything. So when I would come home, we would see each other at a bar or something. And she was one of the few people who didn't like to see me drinking, especially heavily. A lot of other men, they encourage you like, yeah, go, Jamal. But she hated that, and she was concerned about my health when she learned of, some of the concussions I suffered while playing football. And then after her encouragement, I was led to a pastor by the name of Stephen Darby from my brother Darius, and his messages were, they cut me pretty hard. They presented alcoholism and drugs and things of that nature in a way I hadn't heard it before. And, it convicted me. So I kind of made a promise to myself that one day I would just go cold turkey and stop, and God gave me the power to do that. So in 2018, July of 2018, that's when I had my last drink of alcohol, and I haven't had a sip since.
Want to talk about your relationship with your wife here in just a minute, but you mentioned the concussions. That, again, is something I have not experienced. I learned something playing peewee football in the 6th grade that was very, very profound and shaped the course of my life, and that is I don't like to get hit. So
Right.
You, as a full scholarship football player, obviously that was not so much of a problem for you, but concussion. You suffered some injuries. Right. How did those affect you?
I would say injuries also altered the course of my life. Excuse me. I suffered several severe ones, before I even made it to college. The first was a hematoma, which is, a big blood clot in the leg. But we caught it in time. We made it to the emergency room, and it had to be drained with a 12-inch needle. But the doctor said if we didn't catch it in time, I could have passed. So that injury was, actually very untimely because I was going through the academy's acceptance criteria where I had to do physical fitness tests and things of that nature. Long story short, my last MRI, I was cleared the day before the academy's deadline. So instances like that are kind of what, showed me God's realness even at an early age. Beyond that, at the prep school, I suffered a fingertip amputation when my finger was wedged between a door and a wall. And upon impact, I kind of slid my finger out and the fingertip came off. So, another freak injury. The next was a skull fracture. My right eye, the whole bone under here was crushed, during an altercation at a bar when I was living wrong. So probably a consequence of my own actions. But and then the concussions definitely came from football. I suffered 5 of those.
Wow.
As well as a lot of, a host of other injuries on the football field. But the concussions were the worst. And, I'm still dealing with them till this day. But, due to my mother being a prayer warrior, she's kind of taught me how to deal with them and, pleading the blood of Jesus over these injuries, binding the enemy's attack on my body, and claiming scripture and that Jesus, by his stripes we're healed and no weapon formed against us shall prosper. So it's actually ironic that I wrote a book because I'm not the greatest speaker due to my concussion symptoms. Sometimes I have difficulty articulating what I want to say. So I still deal with them today. But like Moses, most people don't know this. I learned this a few weeks ago. He struggled with a speech impediment that God delivered him from. So that provides, a wealth of encouragement for me that he'll do the same. So I'm confident that, God will heal me of every ailment that I'm dealing with.
When you were courting your wife, you met your wife,
Yep.
and you've become a father and also a stepfather. So you stepped into a very difficult role.
Yes, sir.
Sharon stepped into the same role with my daughter, and because I was working, she became sort of the primary caregiver because we had primary physical custody. So I can see, having watched from the outside, that's not an easy role to take on. You yourself saw your mother remarry and saw how you were handled, the relationship you had with your stepfather.
Right.
What did you learn from that relationship, and how are you trying to apply it as a father and stepfather in your current marriage? Well, I shouldn't say your current marriage, in your marriage. Let me put it that way.
Right. Yeah, my stepfather was present. He was there. He was a huge help financially. But, he didn't provide the discipline or the authority that a man needs or a young man needs from a father figure. So I learned a lot of what not to do. And I think the biggest takeaways are, you gotta pour into these kids from a young age, because they have all type of negative influences pulling them in the wrong direction. Starting with Disney and now, and the homosexual type agenda they're pushing and all types of stuff. So I think rooting children in the Word is key. And then after that, excuse me, it's constant pouring in. So love, spending time, just having more time with your children than the outside world does. And then also as parents, playing roles with your children. So as a father figure, not only being the face of authority, but as I'm still learning, you got to be gentle as a father as well, and not cause your children to to wrath, for lack of words.
Mm-hmm.
And then so just working together as parents, and realizing these kids are smart. They'll try to manipulate you if they can. So being on the same page, not arguing in front of the children. If one parent makes a decision here and you don't agree, talk about it offline with your spouse, and then come back and address the child or whatnot. But the influence that parents have on children is monumental, and I think that's part of the main reason why God established roles, and he designed it for the man to work and the mother to care for the home. But society has shifted to households needing two incomes, and now their children are being raised by YouTube and
Mm-hmm.
all types of bad influences.
Yeah. Sharon and I are probably the last generation that was raised by families where you could afford a family on a single full-time income. So my mother was able to stay home, and thankfully Sharon was able to stay home while I was working, and our daughter was with us most weekdays. But again, the difficult situation, and I'm hearing what you're saying about your stepfather there, the difficult situation for Sharon, not being the birth mother, was to try to discipline our daughter. And there are some step parents who feel that that role, and might feel they're overstepping boundaries by disciplining another man's sons. But what I'm hearing you say is that you feel you and your brother Darius probably would have benefited if your stepfather had been a little more firm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially as teenagers. As I've jumped into the stepfather role, my stepson was 7 years old when we married. So, at that age, I felt he was too old for spanking. So, my discipline, has been more so taking away technology, or even push-ups or something of that nature. But with my military background and my mother and father's sternness, that kind of translated over to me. But as I'm still learning, you have to treat every child different, and I'm learning that with my stepchild to that I need to take a more gentle approach at times, as opposed to being, gun ho all the time. And I thank God for revealing that to me, because it's really helping a lot.
Yeah, it's not politically correct stuff you're putting out there, Jamal. That kids, especially sons, need a role model in the form of a strong father figure in the home to really flourish. Although it is possible, as we can see, for similar situations. My father was raised by his mother and father. They never divorced, but Grandpa, as he got older, really, really liked his whiskey. So my dad was more or less raised by his older sisters. But you make the best of what you can in this life with your own choices. Right. You can't lay it off on somebody else and blame your upbringing for failure. The choices are ahead of you. You may be starting further back. You may be starting with disadvantages, but you'd make the most of what you got. One of the things you address in terms of obstacles that some of us may face and may not even recognize. You deal with generational curses in your book.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that at your age, I would have thought, okay, this is not a thing. This is a way to make up excuses for dealing with problems. I have since changed my views on that. Again, God has been patient with me.
Right.
When you're dealing with generational curses and spiritual warfare, what context have you dealt with these, and what areas do you see these being a challenge for men in general?
As I mentioned, alcoholism was a big one in my family that I had to overcome. A lot of this was kind of communicated to me during my youth from stories from my mother. But pornography is a big one. Sexual sin, other drugs besides alcohol. Even, anger and things of that nature. So, yeah, if it's not dealt with, the Bible says sins of the parents will be passed on. So if they're not dealt with, it's definitely possible. So I think men struggle with a lot of those areas, but men also don't communicate, what they're struggling with as good as they should. So I think, having an accountability partner is very helpful for men, and just being able to open up is something that I think it needs to be encouraged by men, because there's a lot of men struggling these days, and unfortunately for the ones who don't live for God, we're living in the last days, so time is running short. So we need to help these individuals and be a light, and share that they don't have to suffer from pornography. They don't have to be addicted to it, but there's freedom in Christ where you can be free from those things and, enjoy the liberties of life the way God designed you to live.
The enemy will take advantage of any of our weaknesses and try to destroy our witness, but also try to make us ineffective as husbands and fathers, sons and brothers. There's a section in your book titled "He Who Finds a Wife." This is something I can relate to. As I mentioned, Sharon and I are coming up on our 25th wedding anniversary, but both of us, we've got pasts. I was previously married for 10 years. She was previously married for 8. And when we met, she had pretty much resigned herself to growing old alone. And thankfully, God had a different plan.
Right.
We live in an age where we're told by the culture around us that we all deserve to be happy all the time. And that's observably not the way life works. When you get two people together, especially you get two intelligent people, and then you get stresses like finances, children, etc., there are opportunities for conflict. How do we strengthen that relationship over time? How have you and your wife worked on this so that you're not starting to look for other options when things get difficult?
Right. That's a good one. I think first and foremost, just learning from our parents and the couples and individuals around us, and learning from relationships that didn't work. My wife also came from a broken family, so I think learning from my mother's experience that even if two individuals start in Christ, once they begin marriage, typically one of those individuals falls away if the marriage doesn't work. So the key is keeping that marriage rooted in Christ. That's the number one thing, for success in a marriage, in my opinion. For me and my wife, we do a lot of reading, Christian couples books. We read the 5 love languages and, the Love Dare and things of that nature. And those books are truly helpful. The Love Dare helped me, to love my spouse in different ways I wasn't aware I was capable of. Or the 5 love languages showed how my wife loved to be loved in the realm of acts of service, me doing things for her, or quality time. But the sad part is I think a lot of marriages don't take the time to pour into their marriage. Like you said, they're so caught up with their children or finances, or both parents are working.
The entire family is staring into their phone all the time. I can't tell you how often I saw that at restaurants where the family would go out for a meal and everybody is looking at their phone instead of looking and talking to one another. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's just still, I just can't fathom that.
No, you're right. 100%, Derek. And so right now we're reading a couples devotional. At the end of each chapter, it has questions that, we both answer. We share our answers with each other, kind of reflect. And I think that leads to growth. And I think the key is not leaving any doors for, other people or other things to enter, closing that door to the enemy, which is, solidified through keeping God first.
I'll say again, as I said at the beginning, that you're rather young to be writing an autobiography. Who do you hope to reach with this? And what do you hope they get from it?
Yeah, honestly, I hope to reach, people of all ages from, 15 up to 80. Ironically, one of the first people to read my book and leave a review is a man by the name of Tom Flint, who's a proud supporter of Air Force athletics. And he's upwards of 70 himself. And, he shared just how I was able to communicate my trials and tribulations, and how it kind of provided a testament for his life as well, because he was able to relate, as you were as well. So I think just providing that, obstacles and trials, because even in older individuals, they've encountered, more trials and tribulations than anyone. And so for them, I just want them to be able to relate. And then for the younger kids or younger youth, or, young men and women, I want them to see, that God is the answer to it all, honestly. And that if you're not following God, it's never too late. If you're still alive, God has a purpose for your life. If you're growing up in a city that's, a negative environment, you can overcome those challenges. If you're an athlete that's, overlooked, you can still, outwork the competition and, give yourself the best chance to make it. All of those different areas. But yeah, the main one because everyone deals with trials and struggles, but with God, you can overcome anything. And I think that's definitely the key.
There's a story here I want you to share with the audience, because I think this is really cool. I wish I'd thought of this when it came time to propose to Sharon. It was not quite as elegant and as yours. And it just shows, I think, something of your mother here in her being willing to conspire with you on this. How was it that you proposed to your wife?
So we kind of set up a family dinner, or that's the way I communicated it to my wife. We all went to Texas de Brazil at the Tacoma Mall. Probably upwards of 15 family members and friends there. She handed out cards to all of the women with encouraging words and wisdom. Once my wife began reading hers, I got up to go to the bathroom. From the bathroom, I could see where she was reading and how far she had read in her card. So once she had gotten, towards the end of her card, it instructed her to turn around. And by that point, I was behind her on one knee, and the rest is history.
So how did she react when you sprang that on her?
Oh, man, she immediately after saying yes, she burst into tears, and the restaurant burst into, applause. So it was definitely something like out of a movie.
Yeah. The only time I've come close to that was when I surprised Sharon with a barbershop quartet on Valentine's Day. But even though she's an opera singer, she tolerated me trying to sing the lead part in a quartet. It got a little, tight. Jamal
nice.
Byrd, the book is Battle Tested. Your website, where do people, your website, I've got a link to that in the show notes, jamal-byrd.com, but where's the best place for people to go to get a copy of your book?
Battle Tested is available at Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and a host of other retailers as well, all online. But yeah, Amazon is definitely the quickest bet to ensure the book's in your hands.
Well, I will once again call you a young man, and I look forward to seeing where the future takes you, because if you're sharing this kind of wisdom at half my age, then I pray the Lord's got, I'm pretty sure he's got some really incredible things for you as you learn and grow in life experience and in wisdom, because again, you're starting far ahead of where I was at your age. So God bless you, sir. I'm glad you reached out to me and really enjoyed this conversation. Pray that we get to do this again.
I am too, Derek. I do want to say it's truly been an honor to do this. I've been, extremely nervous because you and the rest of the folks at Skywatch are like role models to me.
Oh.
I came across you guys a few years ago by way of Justin Fall's Belly of the Beast documentary.
Yeah.
Where I fell on Tom Horn and then, Colonel Robert McGinnis. And then now I follow all you guys, Josh Peck and, you name it, Jonathan Kahn. I mean, I follow all you guys. I have over 20 of, Skywatch books on my dresser. So it's truly been an honor to actually meet you. Your voice is so familiar to me. It's kind of crazy doing the interview. Because I listen to your 5 and 10 podcasts all the time. So, it's truly been an honor. No,
the honor is mine, sir. Thank you. Again, check the show notes, Jamal-Byrd, that's BYRD, .com for a link to more about Jamal and where you can also get his book. We'll put those links in the show notes, whether you're listening at vftb.net or watching, whether it's YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, God bless you. Subscribe, share this around. And, of course, click for notifications. But as a backup, please download our free app that will bypass the gatekeepers of big tech. So just in case at some point we either say something that they don't like, or they go back into our archives and find something from years ago that they don't like, we will not suddenly disappear from you. And this app is available for iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets, but also for Roku and Apple TV. The advantage of the app on your mobile device is it gives you a calendar of our upcoming events. Also has a Bible app, an audio Bible app with multiple translations in it and more. And if you've got a fairly recent smart TV, you can cast the video from the app using Google's Chromecast or Apple's AirPlay to your smart TV and then watch our video programs on the big screen if you are so inclined. Of course, this weekly program, we've got Unraveling Revelation. There is a program announcement to add, by the way, Sci Friday, which we've been producing for more than 7 years, will go on hiatus at the end of this month, at the end of December. We are just looking at a schedule in 2023 that, frankly, is a little overwhelming if we try to continue producing 2 weekly television programs, which are currently carried on the PTL network. Now, producing video can take more or less time depending on how much production value you want to put into the program. And with Sci Friday, we try to do a fairly decent job of making it visually interesting as well as content rich. But we also have to make sure that we fit it into a 28-minute and 30-second slot. Same with Unraveling Revelation. That means we've only got so much time in any given program, and we have to get sometimes creative when we edit to get it to that specific window. And I've come up with some tricks for doing that, but there are more things we want to talk about, and I need to free up time, since I do all of our video editing, need to free up time in 2023 so that we can finally get a couple of book projects complete that we had hoped to get done this year. I find myself often editing video until nearly bedtime in the evenings, and it's difficult to research and write when you're constantly staring at a computer screen deciding, okay, do I cut out the here and save a second, or do I see if I can cut something else later on? So you get the idea. But never fear, we are swapping Sci Friday for a return of PID radio. This is the podcast that Sharon and I began in March of 2005. 2005, that started all of this. And you can find now on our app a lot of the archives from between 2005 and 2009. I've been going through and adding episodes from our archives as time is allowed. But the last episode prior to this weekend, well, I should say prior to Thanksgiving week, was from April of 2020. There was a short period there during the beginning of the pandemic where we were discussing things on a daily basis and then a weekly basis just to say, look, don't be afraid. God's got all this. But as we're looking around the world right now, we're seeing just a lot that we want to talk about and just not having the time to do it. And quite honestly, it takes me less than 20% of the time to produce a 1-hour audio podcast than it does to produce a 28-minute, 30-second video program. So going forward, we will have PID radio coming out once a week, audio only, but you'll get it on our app and also Roku and Apple TV channels. And that will hopefully compensate somewhat for Sci Friday, because many of the programs or topics that we would discuss on Sci Friday will wind up in PID radio anyway. When you go back and listen to the archives of PID radio, you'll see that we discussed science often anyway. That's just how we roll. So anyway, going forward, PID radio, yes, Sci Friday might come back someday, but with traveling coming up in 2023, conferences, of course, the Israel tour, and we're hoping the tour in October to Turkey, trying to get that plus 2 books done. Not going to happen unless something gives. Anyway, we do have the ongoing Defender Conference, Exposing the Darkness, the virtual conference. Will continue accepting new registrations. You can sign up through February 4th and see the 24 presentations, plus get access as a free bonus to the 6 Skywatch Films documentaries. My presentation is on the literal, physical, geographic location of the Valley of the Shadow of Death. I think we figured it out. You get that, plus, again, Tom Horn, Joel Richardson, Carl Gallups, Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, many other, Judd Burton, Doug Van Dorn, many other top-notch speakers, plus the 6 documentaries, and you get 90 days access from the day you sign up. So even though the conference launched November 4th, you sign up today, you still get 90 days access. You're not missing anything. Our tour of Israel, still time for you to sign up, but I would hurry if you're interested. March 19th through 30th with the optional 3-day extension to Jordan in 2023. We've got 2 buses full. We're working on filling a 3rd bus. And again, if you want to join us, check out the website, gilberthouse.org/travel. That'll take you to the Lipkin Tours website. We've got some video clips that we'll be releasing here over the next couple of weeks. But time is growing short, especially if you don't already have a passport. If you're thinking you might want to do it, you might want to get on the passport right now to make sure that you're good to go come March 19th. gilberthouse.org/travel. Coming up, well, a couple of weeks off as we get into the holidays. And when I say we're taking weeks off, that really means we're going to take a couple of weeks to do a lot of writing between Christmas and New Year's. The next program from A View from the Bunker will be, it'll be the Iron and Myth program, Iron and Myth 11, with Doug Van Dorn, Brian Godawa, and Dr. Judd Burton as we talk about the hierarchy of the spirit realm. That'll be coming up January 8th of 2023. Again, just taking a couple of weeks to try to get some headway, gain some ground on these writing projects that we've got in the works. So until then, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And thank you for taking time to listen or watch this podcast, whether it's our app, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are sold. And our announcer, the very gracious and inimitable D.C. Good. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. As I said at the outset, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.